I'm McEwan, and I'm a scientist at the Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge, and I'm working on the Virus Wars exhibit. Being a scientist is a real privilege. You're paid to come up with problems and then to solve them, and the tools at your disposal are incredible. So you have the state-of-the-art equipment, and you're able to solve these interesting and important problems. I knew I wanted to become a scientist when I was given a children's encyclopedia for my 8th birthday, and I was completely addicted to it. I read it non-stop, and I always wanted to know more about things, so that's how I knew. If I didn't work with viruses, I'd like to work with something on the completely opposite end of the size spectrum, so something like being an astronomer, where you're working with the whole universe or galaxies, would be what I would do. The best thing about being scientists is having the freedom to come up with ideas and solve them yourself, so being intellectually free. If I couldn't be a scientist for some reason, I'd like to be a conservationist, so working out in the wild, working with people, and working in ecosystems that are fragile and rare, and helping to protect them. In my free time, I do a lot of different things like photography, I also like cooking, and I also like running. So I've recently done my first marathon, and I find that running really gets me out of the lab. The first science I ever remember doing was filling water balloons with water and leaving them outside on a really cold night and coming back and finding them as perfect spheres of ice and just finding that wonderful. The advice I'd give to a school child who's interested in science would be go to your local bookshop and go to the popular science section. There's always going to be something that's going to interest you there, and these books are written by people who are at the cutting edge of science usually, and there's always going to be something interesting. The invention that I really could not live without is the internet. I use it all the time to look up references and papers and other information, and if I had to go to a library every time I wanted to do that, my job would be very different. The most important thing that we haven't invented in virus research are proper drugs to treat viral infections. So for bacterial infections, we have a lot of antibiotics that are usually pretty effective. What we don't have is the equivalent for viruses. So I think in the next few decades, we're going to get a lot of antiviral drugs that are going to be useful for treating infections.